For many years, I've made videos about Suzanne Morphew's case. She was the mother who vanished in May of 2020, and they never found her body. Well, that was until September 22nd.
Though her husband was charged with her killing, those charges were later dismissed.
Suzanne Morphew's body yielded new evidence needed for cops to make an arrest. In 2021, husband Barry Morphew was arrested and charged with her murder, but the charges were dropped just as he was about to go on trial. The body was discovered in a shallow grave about 46 miles south from where her mountain bike had been located the day she disappeared in 2020.
Never had a shred of doubt. Not one.
But there are many who believe Barry Morphew remains the prime suspect.
What was never really mentioned was that there was extra DNA all over the house, on her car, on her bike, on her helmet. In fact, there was so much DNA that that's part of the reason why Barry was able to get out of jail when he did, on bond. 1 week before the trial was due to commence, the state realized that they didn't have enough on him, so they released him without prejudice and dropped the case altogether. Just recently, we learned that Barry Morphew and his attorneys had filed a $15 million civil lawsuit against the state of Colorado. These documents in Morphew's lawsuit are so packed full of information that you have likely never heard either. So join us today as we go over some of this main DNA information, because we see what a threat this could be to justice in the future for Suzanne. So joining me today is Naomi. Hello everybody, I've got Naomi here with me. Today she's joining me so we can have a discussion about the DNA and the Suzanne Morphew case. As you know, Suzanne Morphew was found in Moffett, Colorado on September 22nd, but we didn't get the formal announcement until the 27th of September. So I figured it was a good time to bring Naomi back so we could discuss this in full and also go over some really important key things about the DNA that haven't been discussed much. So here is Naomi. She's joining me.
Hi, hello.
Naomi. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really glad that you're here with me. I think there's a lot to discuss here, especially what you and I have been talking about offline, going over the documents and stuff, things that we didn't really know much about. It's just, it's shocking.
I kind of kick myself for not reading through all of this sooner, but
I know, me too.
I guess there's a place and a time for everything. So
and I kick myself too. I wish I would have dug into the info much sooner, but I guess I figured, it's Barry Morphew's attorneys. What could they possibly say that's relevant?
Right.
And so I sort of dismissed it, like a lot of people probably have.
I do think it's a huge disservice to Suzanne to be dismissive of it. And
I know.
definitely think it needs to be addressed. So.
I think that's another reason I think it's so important to have you on today, is because everybody who is gripped by this case, 3 years ago and ever since, probably a lot of people felt just like we did, like, it's Barry's attorneys, I don't need to worry about it. But really, anybody that's gotten invested in this case, they need to know about this. It's actually pretty important information.
It's truly important to go over this and with your eyes open and with the knowledge that you have of the arrest affidavit and the case all the way through and the different motions that have been filed up to date. It's good to go through this and read it and look at all of that. And at the same time, take a refresher on the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's eye-opening for sure.
It is. So. It is. Real quick, I need to say to everybody in the audience, this video is sponsored by Woodoku. It is a puzzle game, and we'll get more into that a little later. But anyway, over the years, we have watched this case, just what we thought seemed to be very strong. And about a week before it was due to go to trial, it just fell apart, absolutely fell apart. A lot of people witnessed that, and it was very discouraging at the time, but we knew, you and I both knew, it was in the best interest of Suzanne that they dismissed it without prejudice.
Yeah. When Barry first got arrested and the arrest affidavit first came out, or we were getting little bits and pieces from Twitter and Warren Sharf, the hearings and whatnot, it kind of did seem like they had a case, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And then they started presenting more and more came out to the public. And then the arrest affidavit came out. And I was like, whoa, like, hold up, because Barry's going to walk if this is the case that goes to trial. And that was scary, right? Because number one, we've not found Suzanne at that time. And the thought of Barry getting away scot-free
sickening.
Was absolutely horrifying. I can't imagine a world where Suzanne's not going to get justice.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
I'm not out for blood by any means. Suzanne deserves justice, right?
Absolutely. The information that we're going to go over, we're going to present, it is really damning towards the state. I mean, it is. It shows a complete lack of regard for procedure, a lack of regard for the rule of law. I mean, really, it's just crazy.
100%.
And so Barry is suing the state of Colorado. Is it 10 or 15 million, Naomi?
15 million, as I understand it. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so $15 million. And the thing is, he very likely could end up getting it because this stuff is crazy. We're going to go over it.
Based upon what I've read and what we know,
this is wild.
He's got a good case.
He has a great case. And that's what shocked me to the core, Naomi. I was expecting it to just be more whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty thorough and it's pretty concrete from what I can see so far.
Yeah. There's some things that the lawyers put in there, of course, because it's going to make their case sound better in the eyes of the court for their client, right? So there's some things in there like that, which make you go, And when you go back to the arrest affidavit and you like kind of compare things, it seems like maybe they might be leaving a little bit out, but there's a lot there. There's a lot there that are big missteps by the state and the county.
And again, we say we're not, quote, fans of Barry. We've the whole time been on Suzanne's side. And honestly, when you look at the, facts leading up to her disappearance, she was about to leave Barry. She was in a relationship with someone else. I think she had she was done with him. It would be a huge coincidence that she somehow vanishes in the midst of all that. And then he somehow benefits humongously with windfalls of cash, the sale of 2 homes.
So he sold Puma Path, he sold Longhorn, and he sold the house in Indiana.
Yes. Which how much money did that give him roughly, Naomi? About 2 mil, 2.5?
Puma Path went for like 1.4, 1.5. Indiana went for like almost 1.
So he benefited greatly when she vanished. There's no doubt about it. Did they end up taking it on pro bono? Because I feel like I heard that in the beginning.
I mean, I would seriously doubt that.
I would doubt it too, but to get their name.
If somebody knows for sure, by all means, let me know. But I wouldn't.
I know.
I wouldn't think so.
Especially Iris Eaton, man, she is a fighter. If I was in deep water, that's who I want. I mean, I don't like her personally, but she can really defend well.
She's what do they call it? Like a pit bull in lipstick?
She's a bulldog pit bull. 100%. If I was up the creek, that's what I would call.
Only got a streak. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Better call Iris instead of Saul, right? It's nuts. I'm playing this game. It's called Woodoku. It's so fun. I need to thank my sponsor, Woodoku, for sponsoring this video. If you love a good puzzle and need a moment to add some calm to your day, you have to try Woodoku. It just might be your perfect escape. So how it works is players need to arrange the wooden boxes to form a line, and then the line disappears, and then you earn points. The puzzles, they're right in between being easy, but also like a challenge to your IQ. Like last night, I wasn't able to sleep very well, and I could not put the game down. I just kept wanting to play and beat my current score. I genuinely love this game. There are 3 different modes to explore and experience during the gameplay. Woodoku is completely free to download and play. It's available on iOS and Android. Don't miss your chance to escape into this world of Woodoku with me. It helps the channel for you to download it. Click on the link in the description box, or you can always scan the QR code that's on the screen right now. Thank you so much, Woodoku, for sponsoring this video. What we've watched transpire over these last 3 years, and then for her to be found again, it's just, honestly, I had resolved that might never happen. I figured the person that did this did something that would make it impossible to ever find her. So I was very shocked.
So I kind of thought differently on it. I've always said I really strongly felt that something was holding everybody back from finding Suzanne. And that was because she wasn't ready to be found yet.
Yeah.
And it would be happening in her own time, in her own way.
Yeah.
And it definitely did.
It sure did.
That, as far as we know, unless there's things that we don't know, which it's always possible, like,
right,
investigators stumbled upon her.
They sure did. Yes.
That's wild.
It is.
With all the amount of time that is put in searching for her, to think that she was just randomly stumbled upon while searching for someone else is insane.
It's mind-blowing, and it has caused me to really wonder if a certain somebody was ready for her to be found too, because there have been financial gains involved in her being found. I don't know. But I have speculated it privately.
Yeah, no, 100% fair. Anything's possible. We've seen a million wild things happen through the history of, like, just our 3.5 years or whatever, doing true crime together. And bouncing cases and thoughts and theories and whatever off of each other. So how we got into this conversation was deciding to do a conversation about the DNA aspect. I feel like that's a very important conversation to have. Not only because of people's limited knowledge when it comes to forensic genealogy, but like what it means for, like, the CODIS hits and matches and things like that. I feel like that's a very important conversation to have. So in doing that, we decided, well, let's kind of dive down and make sure we got our facts straight, on, like, where the DNA hits were and where they found it and, like, how they found it and whatnot. And that turned into
a rabbit hole. A total rabbit hole. I mean, it started with being just, let's make sure we got our facts straight, to, oh my gosh, they didn't do this, and you're just tallying it up because there's so many missteps. It's mind-blowing. So many missteps.
And so for me, I always look at things, like, in a very analytical standpoint when it comes to things like this, because, like, me doing genetic genealogy, it's like prove or disprove. Do your due diligence, like, follow the trails, like, do what you got to do, right? There might be 10 trails. You have to follow all 10 trails until you find the one that is the right one, right? So, and you don't stop until you find that. I'm always looking for someone's biological parent, right? So I only do what I do for other people to look for a biological parent that they don't know who they are. That could be one or both. That could be for any reason at all that they don't know that, right? But so I'm not going to go to somebody and be like, well, I think that this could be your dad, or I think that this could be your mom, because I want to make sure that I'm giving them the right answer and I'm not spinning them in a spiral of, like, hurt, right? Because it's touchy and you never want to do that. No. So I'm always very adamant about, like,
you can't follow it anymore. Rule
it
out.
And so, and involved in that is, like, a ton of research and a ton of, like, talking to people and making phone calls and figuring things out and doing crazy things, like meeting people at, like, a restaurant a couple hours away and getting them to spit in a tube for you. So you can have their DNA, which I've totally done. It works, right? But it's not always the most comfortable thing to do. It's very time consuming. And
How did you get into it real quick, Naomi?
So I had a question about who my biological father was.
Okay.
And I thought that there really wasn't a way to answer that question. I knew about DNA, but I didn't like the, ancestry DNA tests and stuff, but I didn't really know too much about it. And I had been told that one person was my dad by someone that I'm related to. I didn't really know whether or not to believe that. And so I was told I had a sister out there, right? But I didn't know for sure if she was my sister or if she would turn out to be like my cousin or if she would turn out to be nothing. And at the time, quite a few years ago, like DNA tests just were a new thing. And I was like, ooh, maybe. And I looked into it and it was like, but it can't tell you the difference between like a sibling or a cousin, or it'll just tell you like basically you're related. And so this would have been a half sibling to me. So that makes like a huge difference. Right. Like when you're working the DNA. I joined this group because I watch like 48 hours type stuff like all the time. Right.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And there was a story on there about what everyone in the DNA community calls a foundling, which is basically an abandoned child who doesn't know either one of their parents or where they came from or even their birth date or anything. Right. They're just like,
what's the term?
Foundling. Foundling. Right. So
okay.
Like they're found on the side of the road or on a doorstep or whatever.
Gotcha.
And a woman named Cece Moore, who wasn't hugely known at the time, right?
She is now.
I mean, she's everywhere, right?
Dude, yeah.
So she was working this particular case. She talked in her interview about her Facebook group called DNA Detectives. So I joined the group because I thought it was super cool what she was doing, and I really wanted to know more. So I was following it around for a couple of weeks, and I saw someone make a post about being able to tell a match was either your paternal half-sister or like a cousin based upon the X chromosome, right? So
yeah.
I was like, hey, wait, is this legit possible? And Cece Moore got on there and was like, yes, and this is exactly how you do it. These are the steps you take. She's like, start there and let me know if you need any more help. So I called my supposed sister and I said, hey, if I pay for the test, would you be willing to do it? And she said, hell yeah. So I sent her a test, and like 6 weeks later, we got our results back. And so then you take your we did Ancestry. You can do this with any test. So you take your Ancestry test and you download your raw DNA and you upload it to a site called GEDmatch, which is a public DNA database.
Yes. Right.
So because Ancestry doesn't give you your X chromosome like readout, but GEDmatch will.
Oh,
so
okay.
You take it over to GEDmatch and you upload it there, and it'll tell you when you compare it if you're a match on the X chromosome. And we were a full match on the X chromosome, so therefore she's my sister. It was ultimately extremely easy.
Yeah.
Like once you know how to do it and like what you're doing, like that particular part was super, super easy. We also found another sister who had her DNA uploaded on GEDmatch like the same day. She had been sitting there on GEDmatch with no matches for like 3 years. So it was pretty wild.
That's amazing.
I got super interested in it because I thought it was super cool. I just started like helping people as I could. And so
that is fascinating. Wow. Yeah. You could, I feel like you could go on for a long time because you know so much, honestly, which makes you, in my opinion, perfectly qualified to discuss this DNA, this partial DNA.
I definitely nerd out on it. So
well, that's good. That's what we need here. I think that provides like a valuable voice in what we're going to talk about here.
So, and what I do is actually, so I have more resources available to me as a private citizen who's not trying to do anything like law enforcement related, right? But it is the exact same thing, just a different application. As what Cece Moore and Parabon do for forensic genealogy, for like solving cold cases. So they can only use like a couple of databases, like Family Tree DNA is open to law enforcement. GEDmatch, because it's a public database, is open to law enforcement, and I believe they just changed it not too long ago to where MyHeritage is also.
Okay.
But I'm not 100% sure on that. So they have like these smaller databases to use and work off of. So it's a lot harder because it's a lot more research, a lot further back, right? So a lot of times, like a really good match is like 100 centimorgans, which is like a fourth cousin, basically. So you're building a tree backwards and forwards, all of those generations, trying to find a place to fit, right?
That sounds really interesting.
It's super cool stuff.
It is. It is. And yeah, it's really something. Wow. So to give the people some context about what we're talking about as far as DNA goes and what was found on Suzanne Morphew's, let's see, her bike helmet, the front driver's side and passenger side door on Suzanne Morphew's vehicle, a stair right next to her bed as well. It was on the carpet. It was found in so many places, guys. This partial DNA match of a person that had an SA, like a S offense in Tempe and Phoenix, and then one in Illinois. Okay,
unknown DNA and unknown male DNA was found on Suzanne Morphew's bedside, and that was on the floor on the carpet. One of the stairs of the Morphew home, in the sheets in the dryer, the bicycle grips, the bicycle seat, the bicycle brakes and handlebars, Suzanne's bicycle helmet exterior, Suzanne's bicycle helmet interior cushions, the front driver door of Suzanne's car, the front passenger door of Suzanne's car, the glove box compartment on Suzanne's car, and the rear driver's side cushion of Suzanne's car.
Yeah, that's a ton of places. And as I understand it, Barry Morphew and 60 other investigative personnel that were working the scene and other people, they were all ruled out as contributors of this.
So friends, family, people who visited the house, people who were in the car, you know. So this was like, my assumption would be neighbors.
Yeah.
Like the girls' boyfriends.
This is absolutely mind-blowing. And what really kills me is that 1 month before he's arrested, so April 2021, CBI agents Duge and Rogers were notified that there was a DNA match between the swab from the glove compartment of Suzanne's car and an unsolved SA in Chicago, Illinois. Yet, the kicker here is that the state still actioned on arresting him when they knew there was partial DNA matches from here to Kingdom Come. Yet they still arrested him. That's the crazy thing. Now, what's also interesting to note is there was, Cahill and Graham, they took their concerns up about, hey, maybe it's not time to arrest Barry yet. And so they went to the head of the Major Crimes Division of CBI, to Agent Kirby, and they agreed and took their concerns up then with Chris Schaefer, which was the CBI Deputy Director of Investigations. He then contacted Sheriff John Spezzi, and advised against arresting Barry because of this DNA. And at that time, John Camper, which was the CBI director, contacted Spezzi and reiterated his concerns. Camper then claimed this was the first time he ever contacted a sheriff to hold off on arresting an individual, yet none of these people that I just mentioned ever alerted Linda Stanley, the DA, or Lindsay or Walker about multiple calls that they had saying, hey, no, not yet. We can't get yet. We don't have enough here. We got this DNA. We're just not ready. So that was a real kicker for me.
Yeah.
Mind blowing.
Like, why wouldn't they notify Linda Stanley of this?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So she's at the top in Chaffee County Prosecutor's Office, right?
Yeah.
It's her head.
Right. Yeah.
Why wouldn't they notify her of this and say, hey, maybe we should hold off a little bit, or hey, that we might have a problem. Like, what do you want to do? That's wild to me.
It is. And they all had conversations amongst themselves. and never clued
and decided to still do it.
and still go up and
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. And honestly, at times it feels like it was very intentional.
Uh-huh.
Proceeded this way.
Uh-huh.
Because look at what Barry's able to do now. He's got
So
this giant lawsuit.
so much of this case has been thrown out
Yes.
and literally cannot be brought back in to this first-degree murder charge, right?
Right. Due to sanctions. Because they didn't.
Literally, you'd have to bring a whole new list of charges and a whole new case against Barry to maybe get some of this stuff back in. And you'd have to present it in a whole new way. You'd have to do it all above the board, which it has not been.
Absolutely not.
It has not been.
No.
I feel so horrible saying this because it makes me sound like I'm like on Team Barry.
I know.
I am not.
Me too.
Like,
I'm not either.
But let's just be realistic.
Yeah.
Like, if you read through not only this lawsuit, but the judge's order at the, before his charges were dismissed.
Yes. I know. I've got that here.
I mean, whoa.
Yeah, they basically got sanctioned. They said, no, we're not going to allow, 14 of the 16 witnesses. Because they didn't procedurally go about this the right way. They had discovery violations. They weren't handing over exculpatory evidence.
Here's the statement from the judge.
Yeah.
It's not in full. This is in part. This is quoted in the lawsuit. Yeah. Okay. During the pendency of the criminal case against Barry, the state district court's judge expressly found that the foreign male DNA being found on pieces of evidence at the crime scene that would exclude Mr. Morphew would tend to negate guilt, right? Yep. So that's not his exact statement. I could go find that, but like, this is the judge presiding over the court case. And so he actually goes on further to say that had Judge Murphy, had he known about any of this DNA evidence being there, the unknown male and all of that, that he at the very least would not have made him stay in jail for 5 months.
Right. And that was
with no bail.
That was exactly.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, that's huge in a murder case, really. Yeah. You can lie to and omit and, kind of fudge things around when you're dealing with a suspect, trying to get confession or information or trip them up. Yeah. You can't do that to a court. And you can't. It's against all the rules.
Yeah.
Like, period. You get caught doing that, it's bad. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying it's against all the rules.
Yeah, it doesn't bode too well, I think. It makes them look dishonest, very dishonest.
Very. And you're seen as dishonest for the remainder of the case, and everything that you bring out, everything that you say, every piece of evidence is in question, and rightfully so. The DNA profile that they found all over. It's a little bit confusing as to whether or not this is all like one person's DNA profile. Right. There is one part where they say I noticed one of them was 2 different unknown male profiles, right? Yeah. So when they say that there is a hit in CODIS or there's a match in CODIS, right? Or a partial match. So for me, that's a big, right? Yeah. So I know there's been a lot of people saying, well, it's not a match, it's a hit, therefore it's a nothing burger. Well, no, it's not a nothing burger, because when you come from a background like I do, and you use someone's DNA to find partial matches,
that's a big deal
throughout the chain, right? That's huge. So while it's not an exact match to the person who committed the crime or crimes in Tempe, Phoenix, and Chicago, they are related to that person, right? And so my understanding is when they profile it on CODIS and it's a partial match, it's not going to be like wildly distant, like some 12th cousin or something like that. It's going to be relatively closer than that.
the impression from what I was reading that there's a point where I think it was Cahill. Here it is. I think this is it. Cahill, Burgess, Walker, Rorick, Isulian, Grusing, Graham were made aware of the CODIS match from unsolved sex offense in Tempe to partial genetic DNA profile collected from Suzanne's car. But then it was as if everybody assumed somebody else was taking care of it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I gave the example that it's kind of like if Steve, my husband, and I are in a public place and we both assume, I assume he has my daughter and he assumes I have my daughter and neither one of us have the daughter. Well, then the daughter is lost, right?
Yeah, right.
It's the same thing in this case. If nobody was trying to track down what this partial match really looked like what's going on here, it's lost. Nobody has tracked it down.
FYI, so when I'm at work, right, and we need something done,
Yes.
and we need to make sure it gets done, we assign that task to one person to oversee that task and ensure that it gets done, right? So, why wasn't that done? There should have been one person that was like had the assignment of like making sure to follow up and keep a chain of events and knowing what was going on with that particular CODIS hit, right? And then the other CODIS hit, and then the other CODIS hit.
Amen to that. You know what? Let's go ahead and I'm going to play this video for them so everybody understands like why this is so relevant. This matters. This truly does.
I know this is significant. I'm a former prosecutor. I know how much damage this can do to a prosecutor's case if you are charging Barry Morphew in this case. All right, take a look. In the summer of 2020, CBI forensic analysis determined foreign unknown male DNA was found on various items of the crime scene. The interior cushion of the bike helmet, Mrs. Morphew's bike, the glove, back seat of Mrs. Morphew's Range Rover. Mr. Morphew, along with other investigative personnel working the scene, were excluded as the source of the sample. Communication logs with the Forensic Lab Division of CBI indicated that Agent Cahill had come to believe the DNA sample found in Mrs. Morphew's car belonged to suspects who may have perpetrated the crime. On May 19th, 2021, Agent Cahill, among other law enforcement personnel, received a CODIS match letter indicating the unknown male DNA partially matched DNA found in 3 out-of-state unsolved sexual assault investigations in Tempe, in Phoenix, and Chicago. That's huge, right? That's huge. That is a problem. That, to me, you put that in a courtroom with a jury. Like, this is what reasonable doubt looks like.
You've got a CODIS hit, and so folks understand CODIS has 2 different categories. You have what has traditionally been, categorized as known suspects, those individuals that have either been positively identified from, say, for instance, a sexual assault at a scene, or that you have taken sample from with like a buccal mucosal swab for those individuals that are within the system that are required to give up a sample. Then you have this other group, which has traditionally been known as the forensic category, and those that are unidentified. The fact then that if what I'm hearing is correct, that you've got an individual with disassociated DNA that is associated with a sex crime is significant. I mean, you can't look past that. You have to understand that that this is the odds of this happening and not be associated with her disappearance, I think, are tough to kind of explain away. I would imagine the defense, if this were to go to trial, would make quite a bit of hay with that.
That you read in the Morphew complaint, what did you read that just really blew your mind that you can think of offhand?
So, I mean, honestly, like the amount of DNA that was found and the fact that the DNA was found in the house, not just in the car or like whatever, right? And on her bicycle helmet. I don't know how I missed that.
Sorry, I did tell him to keep it down.
So the cast report on Suzanne's phone, I think, was the way it's written. There's a little bit of room for omission and implication there. And I don't know what's actually correct and what's not. Obviously, even if Barry did kill Suzanne in the afternoon, he could have still had access to her phone, right? So I would say probably that the fact that her phone was apparently used on the night of the 9th and early morning of the 10th, that's what they're claiming. Would not necessarily to me say that it was Suzanne using her phone. They did actually go so far as to like talk about how the Facebook friend request was definitely made by Suzanne, and she was the one that had access to her phone and was admittedly by both parties alive the morning of the 9th. And she was like getting notifications of like accepting, you know, people accepting her friend request that she was made the night before. And the password was not only changed that night, the night of the 8th, but it was also changed again the morning of the 9th. Right. So I found that a little surprising because I'd not heard that, like that it was changed twice, right?
Either. Yeah.
But so, I mean, that was during time when she was in communication with Jeff Liebler, right? So she definitely had her phone and she was definitely alive during that time, in my opinion.
I'm of the same belief as you. I feel that there's quite a bit that leans towards her still being alive on the night.
Yeah.
And also specifically is that she says, hey, get on WhatsApp. She tells Jeff to get on WhatsApp so they can carry out a conversation, which I think who's going to get Jeff on WhatsApp? I don't think Barry's going to be doing that.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, how's he going to summon Jeff to WhatsApp? And
I mean, I guess so. I thought so. I don't use all these crazy apps and stuff. Like I just don't. I thought you could only use WhatsApp for talk communication back and forth to each other. Apparently, that's not correct. You can like text, call, voice memo, like that sort of thing.
I think you can face everything. Yeah.
Right. So it's like Facebook Messenger, I guess, but it's encrypted. So I guess therein lies the difference. Not just anybody, unless you save your conversation, can like get back on there and see it. So apparently Jeff was the one who initiated the end of the contact on the 9th.
Yeah, you told me that.
So in the arrest affidavit, right, it's all open-ended and Jeff just never heard from her again after she told him to get on WhatsApp, right? In this lawsuit filing, at 2:39, Jeff sent Suzanne a message that said, like, basically, I can't talk, my crew's home. Right? So he's the one that, so he's the one that ended the communication for that day. So, like,
but then that really opens up the time frame that
it really does.
Done this. I mean, it could open it up 3 extra hours. In fact, when he starts going on airplane mode, like at 5:30 or I don't remember the first time he goes on mode, but that could open up to that point where he's working in and out of it. That's so interesting.
Yeah. There was still something else that I was going to say, but go ahead and say what you were going to say.
Well, I was going to talk about that static drift. So the defense alleges that the FBI had informed, I think it was the CBI, that they had contact. So FBI contacts CBI, lets them know, hey, by the way, there is a static drift issue, which is basically, from what I understand, so satellites. There are 4 satellites that are used, I believe, to triangulate your GPS.
Mm-hmm.
And so when there's static drift, because of barriers like mountains and buildings and stuff, it kind of skews that signal. And so it can cause the GPS to not be as precise. And so the FBI actually informed CBI of like, hey, this is probably not real precise because of the static drift. That's actually an issue in that area because it is so sparsely, populated. Also, you've got the mountains. It's just a really touch and go area as far as signal goes. So I thought that was pretty interesting because we've been sort of fed this idea that it's gospel.
that, you know, he was jumping around the house and he was chasing her when really it might have just been a really uncertain signal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You know, and so here's another, I was just scrolling down.
yeah.
Said the report showed that Suzanne was on her private Pinterest account late into the night of May 9th, many hours after the arrest affidavit stated that she had been killed.
Oh, see, I
Right?
haven't gotten there yet.
But it also says that the forensic report showed that Suzanne was on password protected sites to which only she would have had access.
okay.
This is from her computer.
Okay.
Wow. So like the amount of things seemingly that were put forth in the arrest affidavit that are like half truths, or they were warned were inaccurate or false.
Yeah.
That they put forth on this arrest affidavit was so egregious.
I would agree.
I can't believe they did it.
I can't either.
I can't, like, it goes back to what you were saying about it feeling very intentional.
It feels intentional.
Right? Because what's happened now is that none of this evidence or anything like this can really be used. Right?
Yeah. Right.
There's some workarounds to it. There's a little bit of loopholes, but everything's going to be suspect.
Absolutely.
And there's going to be a lot of things that Iris Eden and her team can get thrown out just because
definitely
they've already been so suspect, right?
Yeah.
That's really unfortunate.
I feel like we're going to have to do another one of these where we just start banging on the details.
So what I'd really like people to do is like read through this lawsuit and catch up. Right? And like get on the same page and like understand like what really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And am I taking this lawsuit as gospel, as like the God's honest truth and like it's got to be fact? No. Like my mind is still open to like there's going to be some gray area here. Right? But everybody really needs to read through this.
Read it for themselves. Make a judgment call on what you think is.
Yeah, and maybe you should post a link to this like under this video in like the description so that everybody can just find it easily. Like there's no, it's not difficult to read. The font is very large, you know, like.
Exactly.
It is 185 pages.
It's very long and it's very
a lot of it's repetitive info, but
but still catch up. We would love for you guys to look into this too, because I mean our minds were pretty blown.
And then maybe we can like do another discussion.
We'll do another discussion next time with like a live audience, so maybe we can address questions.
Yeah. I think when both of us started like reading through this and like going through this went from a simple like 20-minute discussion about DNA and the importance of it to like
several hours it could go. It's crazy.
To like, oh my God, wow. Like that's bad. Let's just say like there's a lot of people who put forth a lot of work. Right? There's people like Martin and AK who have done just a vast amount of information on the telematics and the pings and everything. And I remember AK putting out a video like months ago about the static thing with the phone and like him going like, I want to say close to the property and like having his phone show him like somewhere else or whatever.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's things like that out there. There's people like that out there who have done a vast amount of work and have a vast amount of knowledge about things that we just don't.
Right.
Which is why I felt comfortable coming and talking about the DNA, because that's where like my strong suit is, right? So, but yeah, this is a lot. And I can't believe people aren't just going crazy over it.
Like if this came out on Koberger, everybody would be like flies on you know what? Because it's a
why did this get lost on Suzanne? Like this is to me huge. This is very important.
It is
very telling.
Yeah.
And it's
Actually,
very,
if you followed the case, yeah, it's just unbelievable.
it's very sad that this kind of lapse in judgment by such professional people
Right.
has happened.
Yeah, and it could cost her justice. That's what just
Yeah.
kills me
And
because
it could cost the state of Colorado $15 million.
I know. I know, and it's sick to imagine him winning that money. But you know,
It really is.
there's so many
I,
things that have gone wrong
I
too.
but reading through this, the way they've laid it all out and their arguments,
Makes you wonder if he will win, right?
it really does.
I know.
They
And
present a very good case.
like I think they got a good chance, and as much as I hate to admit that, because
Yeah.
I've never been a proponent of Barry. In fact, I mean, you know exactly how I feel, and anybody
Yeah.
watching this knows how I feel. I've been very expressive. I think he pulled off what we could call, as it turns out, the perfect thing.
That's what I was going to mention. My little theory
Yes, please talk about
how this DNA could have gotten everywhere.
because it's brilliant and
Right? And I don't know that it's all the same DNA because honestly, it's really confusing the way they word it out, right? So I don't know if it's all this like the same DNA profile that's all throughout the house or if it's a couple different ones. But it was like, how could have all of this gotten everywhere and it still have been Barry, right? And so my thought on that is like, what if he used like someone else's gloves? Like found a pair, stole a pair, bought a pair of used gloves and or a couple pairs, right? And that's what he's using to touch everything.
And every step as he's going, he's using these gloves, and that explains the DNA all over everything.
Right. Right. I mean, because what? So you put on a pair of like medical gloves or something like that,
double glove,
or you know, like even those dish gloves or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you've got like some room to where it's not really touching your skin, and then you put on another pair of gloves, and I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying
that is the only explanation here.
It's possible though, and like we looked up, you know, like the secondary transfer and all of that about using.
That was a brilliant study. I want to actually read that before we go because it was so just important, interesting. It perfectly laid out the info of how this is possible for somebody else's DNA to get on everything, and it the person's the actual person who did the crime.
Yeah.
So let me find that. It's from last night. I mean, both of our minds have just been absolutely blown.
Oh, and also, if anybody knows of any like Forensic Files episode or anything like that, that possibly somebody listened to get an idea like this, like please send it my way because I really want to watch it. I really want to listen to it. I really want to see like. I can't think of one off the top of my head. I asked another friend of mine who listens to podcasts, like true crime podcasts, like nonstop. She couldn't think of one off the top of her head, but if anybody out there has one, like, please.
Yeah, if you can remember a case where somebody's gloves led to DNA of a random person being at a crime scene that they were not at, please chime in. I'm going to read this real quick because we really think that maybe because Barry was an avid like true crime listener.
Yeah.
He very well could have listened to this.
If it just so happens to be on that list in the arrest affidavit of certain episodes that he was listening to.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
I should go back through that list actually.
Yeah. And I've still thought, well, maybe unknowingly, you know, he was just in the the idea of being just extra conscientious and careful. You put the gloves on because he knows, hey, I don't want to get DNA on everything, even though it should be on stuff. I mean, he's her husband, but I think he unknowingly just happened to have somebody's DNA all over everything from those gloves. I really think your idea.
See, I kind of think there's a chance he's methodical enough.
And it could be. I mean, it could be. He could have found these.
At this point, I don't put anything past anybody, but I mean.
No, 100%. It's very possible. Okay, I'm going to read this. It is, let me see if I can zoom in. Now, I realize on the screen you guys won't see this, but I'll just read it real quick. With the development of highly sensitive STR profiling methods combined with sound statistical tools, DNA analysis on the subsource level is hardly ever seriously questioned in court. More often, the exact mode of DNA transfer to the crime scene is questioned. In burglary cases, in particular, when gloves are worn, secondary DNA transfer is often discussed as explanation for finding a DNA profile matching the accused because it's well known that gloves can act as a potential vector for indirect DNA transfer. In this study, we investigated the shedder status as a possible factor influencing the extent of secondary DNA transfer to a crime scene, with the person committing the crime wearing working gloves. Firstly, the shedder status for 40 participants, which were made up of 20 male, 20 female, was determined. Following a previously published procedure, good shedders, that's what they're called, good shedders, were found to deposit a higher amount and quality of DNA onto objects compared to bad shedders. Secondly, participants were paired into 4 groups: good with good, good with bad, bad with good, bad with bad. Each group consisting of 5 parts. The first participant, P1, of each pair used working gloves to pack and carry a box to simulate a house move. 2 days later, the second participant of the pair wore the same pair of gloves to simulate a burglary, using a screwdriver as a break-in tool. After taking swabs of the outside and inside of a glove, which is a primary DNA transfer, and the handle of the screwdriver, secondary DNA transfer, full DNA analysis was performed. Our experiments show that good shedders overall deposit more DNA than bad shedders, both onto the outside and the inside of the glove. Regardless of being P1 or P2, when conducting the experiments with 2 participants sharing the same shedder status, no significant differences occurred in the number of deposited alleles. In 6 out of 19 cases, a DNA profile matching P1 was found on the screwdriver, and in all 6 cases, P1 was a good shedder. Our results indicate that the shedder status of an individual affects the extent of DNA transfer. They further confirm the possibility of an innocent person's DNA profile being found on an object that they never handled. That was so interesting and profound because it totally shows us and shows the audience that it's your idea, your theory is feasible.
It's absolutely feasible. And is that what happened? I don't know. But it would explain.
It explains it.
It would explain why Barry's DNA wasn't on anything, but some foreign DNA was, right?
And what's so odd about this too, Naomi, is even in her vehicle, where her husband's DNA should have been everywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
If you looked at my husband or at my car right now, my husband's is all over. His DNA is all over my car. It just is. We always use each other's car. How is Barry's DNA? How is it not in her vehicle at all? But some rando's DNA is all over it.
Yeah.
The gloves.
And like, so when it came down to it, like at first I was like, well, on the glove box, on the back seat of her car, like, I mean, what if somebody changed her tires and like put the little warranty slip into her glove box, right? Even the passenger side and the driver's side door, like I could explain that away. How did it get on the floor in her bedroom? How did it get on the stair in her house? How did it get on the sheets that were in the dryer?
It's big. It's a lot of locations.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's not, you know, you mentioned like, well, what if it's like the previous owner of the car? Well, okay, well then how did it get on her bicycle helmet and her bike?
Right.
Right? Because she had only been mountain biking for a few months.
Yes.
So
the idea of, you know, if Barry's the guy, right, which it is what it is, we kind of believe yes, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like
100%.
My opinion, there's never been a doubt in my mind.
Never for me either.
Right.
So that morning when he's, you know, putting the bike into the down the, what do you call it?
The ravine.
The ravine. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
picked it up with those gloved hands. Oh, and there was even this DNA on the brakes. Did you notice that too?
Yeah, the handlebars, the grips, the brakes,
which to me is
and
every
the bike seat.
person. Yeah, that's every place a person might have grabbed, touched, whatever, these gloves. I don't know.
What I want to know is that, was it the handle brake or the brake brakes? Because you remember in the body cam, the brake was like locked up or something, right?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yes.
So
I think they spoke to it being on the bicycle grips, seat, brakes, handlebars, her helmet, exterior, Suzanne's bicycle helmet interior cushion, front driver's door, passenger's door, glove compartments, rear driver seat cushion of Suzanne's car. Even.
So they say brakes specifically. So that would be like literally the brakes on her tires of the bike, right?
I think so.
That's the way I think I would take it.
That's how I perceived it. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what was locked up on her bike to make it inoperable, right?
Yes.
On the body cam footage. Remember, he was like, oh, it won't. Yeah.
Right. And then the officer goes, that's the husband. Did you notice that in the body? That's the husband.
Hey, could you not touch the bike with your hands, please?
Hey, guys.
That's the husband. That's the husband.
Throughout this Morphew complaint, and I would like to get it in front of me, the exact part where it discusses it, but basically what is determined is that her vehicle was used in the commission of a crime, her 2015 Range Rover.
Yeah, so it's said repeatedly, right?
Yeah, said repeatedly.
And that came from that came from Graham at the CBI, I want to say.
Okay. I know I wrote it down.
Or Cushing? I want to say it came from the CBI, though.
I think it was the CBI. Yeah.
But that was the other kicker, too. My God, when I read that, I was like, you've got to be freaking kidding me.
Yeah.
So they never did
follow
telematics or any of that sort of report.
Right. And then
on her Range Rover at the same time as they're saying that they believe it was used in the commission of the crime.
Yeah. And then you were reading me through our messages. I know. Then you were reading me through our messages that the person who they discussed with, getting the telematics, they said, oh, well, it's going to take me all summer.
And they can't do it without an actual order to do it.
Yeah.
So the defense, Barry's defense team can't request that be done. Basically that, the way I took it, maybe I'm wrong, but that report has to be done, or that request has to be made through legal steps, through the FBI or the CBI or whatever, in order to get that report done. Now, can they still do that? I think they can. They'd have to take possession of the car from what's his nuts that's got it.
Right. Brad.
But why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, they just didn't care to or something.
They did Barry's truck.
Yeah,
they did the Bobcat. Yeah. Who knows what else they did? Why, if you think that this is the vehicle that was used, why wouldn't you do it?
Right. And you and I, on a side note, we even wondered, was this mysterious DNA found on the inside of Barry's truck?
Right. There's no reports on that.
No reports on that.
What it does say is search dogs and cadaver dogs didn't hit on the car or either Range Rover or Barry's truck.
Yeah. This is like a big old question mark. Whose DNA?
Yeah.
There's so many question marks here, but I really hope this inspires a lot of people to go out there, read that Morphew complaint.
Yeah.
Dive into it like we did and just see it for yourself, because it's pretty crazy. It's pretty
and go back and forth to the arrest affidavit and the other motions that were filed in the criminal case. Those are all findable through Colorado's judicial website, right? Yes. So there's a big list of them, like Morphew complaints or whatever, right? Yeah. And if you can't find them on there, somebody's got them.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely need to do a follow-up to this.
We definitely do. We definitely do. Yeah.
And we can go over it in more detail. As we continue to read through it, we'll just jot down
Yeah.
really good points,
Yeah.
Anyway, I've had such a good time discussing with you. Thank you, Neil, for taking the time.
I always love spending time with you. So
I know, I love it too. It's so awesome. So
Don't miss your chance to escape into this world of Woodoku with me. It helps the channel for you to download it. Click on the link in the description box, or you can always scan the QR code that's on the screen right now. Thank you so much, Woodoku, for sponsoring this video.